I know that the recommendation for the consideration for the special exception to a mobile food truck next to Hops and Berries is being considered, and I just wanted to have I may have some comments, and some of them are going to be a little redundant from the last time I was here, but I also wanted to address a couple of other points. So thanks for the opportunity to express my opinion relating to this special request. For the food truck next to Hops and Berries and directly across the street from Tahona Kitchen and Bar, who recently invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to provide and food and serve those same patrons that were considering letting a mobile food truck come in and serve. And I want Hops and Berries folks to know that there's nothing personal. I look forward to patronizing their establishment. But again, this is redundant, but if they wanted to serve their clients food, they should have put in a kitchen. Last month, it was stated that the original intent of allowing food trucks into an area was so that food could be brought into underserved areas and to satisfy unmet needs. Within 500 feet of Hops and Berries, there's Tahona, Rhodey, Bishop's Quarter, Tano's, Ramsey's Trailside, Hometown Cafe, Wicked Pickle, The Works, Paxton's Grill, Mile 42, and soon to be, I think, Birdie's, or I'm not sure of the name, that's going to be opening across the street here at Loveland Station. 11 establishments that have invested millions of dollars to accommodate the dining needs of the downtown Loveland community. There is no unmet dining need in downtown Loveland. It was also stated last meeting that there is no anticipated fiscal impact to the city if the applicant's request for special exception to accommodate a mobile food vendor within the historic district at 118 Carl Brown Way is granted by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I would imagine that comment's more directed towards any additional costs that the city might bear. But it's also true for any benefit or lack thereof when bringing a food truck into the area. If I'm not mistaken, every bricks and mortar establishment in Loveland pays a myriad of taxes that benefit the city's operating budget and the community in general. There is no fiscal benefit to the city or community that comes from a food truck that simply rolls in and out of town when the weather and crowds dictate. My last point is that shouldn't an establishment like Hops and Berries, and really any new business in town, shouldn't they have to be open to the public for some length of time before they can make a special request to bring in another unrelated mobile business to compete directly with those who have paid the price of admission to be here? There are no sure things, so it would be really nice to know that Hops and Berries will be open and around a year from now before you go making special accommodations to facilitate a fictitious need of an underserved public by a business that is yet to open their doors and bring one person to the downtown area. On behalf of our 165 employees at Paxton's and Ramsey's and the other restaurant owners, operators, employees in the area that all pay local taxes, again, I respectfully ask that you would deny this request and any future mobile food truck request for the downtown historic area. I do recognize that special events would potentially fall in a different bucket, but even then I would ask for the consideration be made to those that have invested their time, talents, and energy in the area. And if to me, I'm sure some on the council may wonder why we're making such a big deal out of this. But it's really principle. I mean, and if the Hops and Berries guys were here, it'd be as if, we came in and requested to bring in a mobile beer garden every weekend and drop it down in between Paxton's and Ramsey's after they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to open a tap room less than a block away. It's the same thing. We wouldn't do that, right? One, we love the investment they made. It's going to be great for the community. It's going to improve the overall downtown entertainment district. And we want to be good neighbors. But anyway, time's up. Thank you very much for the opportunity to give me my comments.
Thank you. Next, we have Todd Osborne.
Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive.
Oh, one.
You're done. You're done.
You have a very long name.
So I support local business, but there are zoning limits. Food trucks should be for special events, not meant to be an extension of property. According to the photo in the agenda packet, it appears the food truck is within 25 feet of any handicapped parking space or ramp. That violates Loveland Code 732.05C. I'm not sure about being within a fire lane, but it looks to be within 10 feet from an entrance, which is prohibited by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Did you know in Milford, food trucks cannot be located at least 100 feet from the front door of any restaurant or outdoor dining area? Now back to the issue at hand. Packet page 17 mentioned the food truck at Cappies. This was a totally different issue, but one commonality. It served as a required kitchen, a building extension. Are these proposed food trucks to get around liquor laws requiring food at a location serving alcohol? Is there a physical kitchen at Hobsonberry? The historic district is a protected area. Rotating food trucks will give an appearance of a carnival. Is this the image we want of downtown? As was just mentioned, you have established businesses who have followed the codes and have heavily invested in the zone. How would these food trucks not be a detriment? How is a group of rotating food trucks extraordinary, complementary, and beneficial to the community? How would this enhance connections and relationships between the bike trail and the downtown district? The trail is the downtown district. And as for adequate parking, don't go there. There isn't adequate parking during the probable peak hours. The noted on-site parking is actually a private paid parking lot, which goes against current city code, by the way. Nowhere in the discussion is about signage on the food truck. Outside of a sandwich board, billboards are prohibited in the district. And audio, this is missing also. So if allowed, how will these literally be permitted? There's a daily license fee of $20 per truck, and these permits are not transferable. Planning and zoning should not permit this use. Flat out, it's not special. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that brings in the public hearing section of the meeting. Since this is a continuation, do we open it up for public hearing, or do we just have the?
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to the solicitor, but I think we've already had public comment as part of the public hearing, and that portion was closed. So I think at this point we're reopening the Planning and Zoning Commission's consideration and deliberation.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that. Okay, so all right, we're going to discuss case 22-03, which is the continuation of the request for special exceptions of 118 Carl Brown Way. City, would you like to give us your overview on the?
Yeah, I mean, and we went into great detail at the last meeting regarding the proposal. And you know, I think that one thing I would note within the historic district is that really the built environment down here is sort of, we're working with what we have as far as existing layout, parking, the whole 9 yards. So with that is how the application was considered. And I'd also like to address the point regarding fiscal impact. That is directed specifically to what the impact to the city would be from that proposed use. It doesn't really speak to the extraneous, property tax revenues and things like that. So with that, Mr. Egan was correct in his assessment part. So in that, looking at this, looking at the proposal, the question really becomes: we have the set of special exceptions. Ultimately, it's discretionary with the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval. That said, this application does appear to meet the requirements on its face. A couple of components. The application is by Hops and Berry. It is user specific. It is only for Hops and Berry. It would discontinue if their use terminates. That's an enforcement matter that we would have to take up if that were the case. With regard to the special exception code, you have to look at what the specific requirements of the mobile food truck are, and it's really ultimately up to the Planning and Zoning Commission in their discretion as to whether they're going to grant that. So that's what I would say. Nothing's really changed from the prior public hearing as far as the location, duration, proposed use. It's really just up for consideration at this time.
Thank you.
There is, I forgot to bring it, but there is some language in the zoning code, and I can't find it right now on the website, but it specifically talks about food trucks and odors and
It's under enforcement.
enforcement.
It is.
That's right here.
Section 1-1.
While they're looking that up,
1111.
Yes.
oh wait,
111108, and there is a specific there's some specific standards with regard to food trucks, and I think you're calling to point number
Would you mind just reading them?
yeah, I can. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall approve the location of a mobile food truck. The mobile food unit may be on city-owned property or private property. Is not permitted to be located in a public or private street. It has to operate in a manner that blocks or obstructs, or that it cannot operate in a manner that blocks, obstructs, or restricts the free passage of pedestrians or vehicles in the lawful use of sidewalks, streets, or public places. This mobile food unit must demonstrate there is adequate parking on the property where the food unit is located, or is adequate parking immediately adjacent to the property where the mobile food unit is located to ensure public safety for patrons of the mobile food unit. The owner of the property owner of the property where the mobile food unit is located shall consent in writing to the location of the mobile food unit prior to the approval of the special exception permit. If permission is revoked by the owner, the city shall be notified of the revocation in 72 hours.
Constantly comes
Or 2 business days. Mobile food unit shall be licensed and fully comply with all applicable laws according to Hamilton County Board of Health or other applicable Board of Health, and shall provide a copy of all required licenses for a food service operation to the zoning administrator prior to the issuance of a special exception permit. Board of Health permit is revoked or suspended. The City of Loveland shall be notified of such revocation or suspension within 72 hours or 2 business days by the owner-operator. The mobile food unit is responsible for maintaining trash receptacles and shall maintain all areas surrounding the location of the mobile food unit free from all litter and debris arising from its operations. Trash receptacles shall be removed and emptied at the end of each day. A mobile food unit shall remove its mobile non-motorized wagon, cart, or trailer or motorized vehicle at the end of each business day unless otherwise approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Structures, canopies, tables, or chairs for customers' use are not permitted to be set up around a mobile food unit unless approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. All signage displayed on a mobile food unit shall be in conformance with the City of Loveland zoning code and other applicable regulatory codes. A mobile food unit is permitted to have 1 portable sandwich sign in conformance with the City of Loveland zoning code. All approved special exception permits expire 1 year from the date of issuance. The Planning and Zoning Commission may place restrictions on the hours of operation of the mobile food unit. All grease and gray water produced from the mobile food unit shall be disposed of in accordance with applicable state and county regulations. A mobile food unit shall not be located in any fire lane, travel lane, entrance, exit, or any required parking space. A mobile food unit and associated equipment shall meet the requirements of Section 117503 of the Loveland Code of Ordinances.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's also mentioned in a
I found it by now.
732. Todd was holding that up.
Yes, Mr. Cross.
I had a question. I know at times we've had more. How many mobile food units are licensed in the city right now?
Special exception.
Yeah.
2.
This would be the third.
Mm-hmm.
I know one time we had 6.
But he's asking for permission to bring any food truck he wants in whenever he wants for the course of a year. Correct?
His application states that he would have a rotation.
Same as Narrow Path and
Cappies.
Cappies had
Great.
Same thing. And they're both alcohol establishments.
Mhm.
Do we know if there's seating inside of this, Hobson?
yes,
They're going to be seating inside the.
and they are here if you have any questions.
Okay,
I know that their other business partners spoke last meeting, so they are here if you had any questions.
I do have a question in regards to the zoning language that was just read. And in regards to outdoor seating, my concern is you're at capacity and people are congregating around the food truck, and then they're using your indoor plumbing facilities, which means you're in violation of building code. And you're in violation of parking at that point because all your parking spaces are used up, and now you're using a parking space for a food truck. So I do think that there's clearly some.
They're not using parking space.
The area that they've defined is really sort of, if you walk a present, and I just point this out because I was just over there the other day. It's sort of like no man's land now that they've enclosed it with the beer garden area.
So it's not a parking space.
It's not really a parking
Okay.
space.
Well, then that one doesn't apply. But I mean, I'm in favor of the food truck rallies and things. I mean, I think that's good. It's a tough one.
Question,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Andy.
Another point I think is around. I'm curious about the process for reapplication. So it says here in the mobile food unit standards that the exception permit expires 1 year from the date of issuance. So my question is, how do they reapply, for one? And then do we have examples of other mobile food units having had this exception for a 365-day period and then reapplying? Do they come before this committee, or is it just your permit is expired, it's been approved before, it can be reapproved just by staff approval?
If they went in front of the special planning zoning commission for a special exception, we've never required them to reapply each year.
We never required them to reapply each year, even though it says that they expire.
Mm.
So, okay. Seems. So one of the things I think when I was the one that a lot of it was just to try to understand, Mr. Egan's point around the spirit of mobile food in the historic district. I think one of the questions that I had was, do we have a rock solid, code in place for what we would like mobile food units to be in the historic district, or so I think that, to your point, Mr. O'Neill, it's a tough one because we've granted exceptions in the past that this has really no different those same exceptions. So it's difficult for us to say, no, not this time, because we've granted similar exceptions. But I certainly feel like we need to do a better job of sort of reconfiguring what we'd like the process to be for mobile food units. Because if it says just that question there, if it is supposed to expire 1 year from the date, we should have a process for reapplication. Because who knows, maybe, again, to Mr. Egan's point, we don't know what this business is going to be like. We don't know what the reception of the intermingling of rotating food trucks and outdoor beer gardens during the summer, during the winter. We don't know what that's going to be like. I'd be willing to, trial this out, but I would like to have some, understanding that it is a trial period. At a certain point, it would be reassessed by the same body that granted that exception, or at minimum by the staff who could, further authorize it going forward. So that was one kind of issue, I think, that I had with this specific case. Why we postponed it to try to better understand that. I think we're sort of still in the same place.
Yes, Mr. Kress.
We do have experience with renewal. How long was Cappies food truck there? His food trucks, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was there 5 years, and I haven't heard of any police reports or stuff or complaints from the Board of
No.
Health. What I would suggest, I agree we should probably have a limitation, like a new business, but that has to actually come from council.
Sure.
We're not a legislative body. So my inclination would be to approve this one and then refer back to council a request that can be expires in 1 year, renewable twice or something till the business gets established, to see if, in other words, it's a new business. They've invested several hundreds of thousands of dollars, and okay, we give you a break on the kitchen, but in 2 years, you got to get a kitchen if you want food service. And that would be something council would have to address.
And another point to these specific standards for special exception use, there was another point that I thought of, which was a mobile food unit shall remove its mobile non-motorized wagon, cart, trailer, or motorized vehicle at the end of each business day, and unless otherwise approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So in the case of Narrow Path, was that a condition that was granted to say, okay, it is allowed to stay in that spot? Because I've never seen that food unit be mobile. So is that what happened in that case? Was it okay? It's fine if it sits there.
We put conditions on.
Okay.
And I think we had, what was a young gal had the one cart that she did remove it because it was on public property, as I remember. The one that was across the street. The young gal.
It was on private property.
But right, she did remove it each day that she wasn't there, because she wasn't there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the day she didn't operate, she took the cart away.
There is also a hot dog cart that got approved. That is frequently at Cindy's in the evenings, and he puts it away every day. But
What was that other section you told me about?
732.
Does Cappies, does that one move or not?
That one's gone. It's not there anymore, I don't believe.
But he would put it away every day, and
Yeah. That's what I thought.
but he went through the same process, special exception.
Yeah, so we've approved. This is. I don't see any material difference between this one and what we approved for Cappies and Narrow Path. Both serve alcohol. Both they had to use they had restrooms. They'd have to use their restrooms. They were.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Al. If we've got the code, we got to look at it, and we've already approved it twice or more than that. I guess other establishments. If we need to change it for different reasons, it needs to come through the legislative side of things.
If I'm So for clarity, and I'm getting caught up, so bear with me for a minute. But on the packet page number 22, and then I think subsequent to that is page 24. It was not obvious to me, and I think I heard staff say that the applicant is the business, which is Hops and Berry. I was confused by the wording on the subsequent page by the owner's affidavit that said that, they were the owners of the real estate, but they were applying. I don't know if it was in the wording, my interpretation of that wording. So again, I was looking for clarity on who is actually asking for this special exemption and who is it granted to.
So if I look at the first page, the name of the applicant is Hops and Berries. And again, in my experience, I look back, and we always I get to remember I lived in the township world for a long time, but the township's always had an owner's affidavit. The owner had to certify that they're agreeing to this application being submitted. Now, I haven't had a chance to look at the application, but I would ask. I think that's a question directed specifically to the owners that they could speak to tonight from the commission is who is making this application, and to clarify on the record for the commission who that is. I think that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get that clarity. So it is,
If you can come to the podium, state your name and
Please.
address.
I signed it.
Can you state your name and address?
Oh, yeah. Jill Barnett. Our address is 118 Carl Brown Way, Loveland, Ohio, 45140. This is my husband, Mark Barnett.
Home address or business address?
Yeah. Did you want home or business?
Business is fine.
Okay.
so again, back to my question fundamentally, and it is you and your business, Hobsonberry, that is making the application. I don't know what business arrangements you have, nor do I really care with the property owner. But when I read the property owner's affidavit, it reads as though they are also applying as an applicant, subject to, where there's, I'm looking for the exact wording here, but I'm looking to make sure from a clarity perspective.
Yeah,
If
I think
That's
that was
granted.
Otto's signature. Below.
Yeah, it's audit,
Yeah, that's who-
signature
who
there,
we-
and then on
Who it leads
page
from. What?
24,
Please?
on page 24, which is
Right here.
right there. That's just not up on the screen.
I'll scroll down. Hang on a second.
I was looking for the screen.
Oh, hang on a
Nope.
second.
Okay.
Get the mouse to work here. Here it goes. There it is, right there.
Stop.
So as I read through this, I became confused about who is actually applying. Now, if this is solely the affidavit and this special exemption is only granted to the business and not the property owner, understand my concern here.
I understand, but he already approved it before we even went this step. We talked to Otto about having food trucks there temporarily. I think that's probably why he signed the paperwork as well as us.
I think that's paragraph 6 here.
Yeah.
Owner shall.
That's what I when
That's
read
what
it.
that's why I interpret it.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah, they're the
page 24 is the owner
Yep.
complying with
Okay.
paragraph 6.
because they're leasing it from
We're leasing it from Otto.
property owner.
Mhm.
The property owner has to agree that
Mhm.
That's right.
that's the way
So-
that's the way I'm interpreting it.
Right. And again, foundationally, what I'm looking to make sure is that it goes with the business, not the property, because otherwise it could become perpetual with the property owner, regardless of who leases the physical building space. So I just want to make sure that's absolutely crystal clear that it's going with the business, not with the property. Because otherwise we'll get stuck in a perpetual renewal.
No, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's a practical matter. It expires 1 year, and I think staff, we're probably going to have everybody come back every year on the anniversary and make a presentation and review them. That way, our recommendation to council to establish some kind of guidelines as to how long these last. 2 years, say, whatever. We're not the legislative body, you guys are.
Right.
Whatever you determine is appropriate, and talk to the local other restaurants, and somebody may be every dime they've got is in where they are now, and they need to operate a year or two to be able to justify and see if they need to have a kitchen.
So in addition, I think my perspective on food trucks is they have a place, but my position on these have been they are a means to bypass the type of investment the brick and mortar businesses are putting in place. When you look at the post-fire, when you look at the investments those businesses have put in, the flexibility that a food truck provides that a brick and mortar establishment doesn't have with regards to putting it along the bike trail, putting it in a prime location that a brick and mortar location doesn't have that flexibility to do, is to me something that yes, we got to look at this code, but I am not in favor, and I'm really not in favor of having, whether we've approved them in the past or not, with all due respect, it's not, while the code is written to say it's not causing harm to the city, it provides an unfair competitive advantage against other brick and mortar locations. And so there is potential harm to the city through having to, from a reinvestment perspective for people that own those brick and mortar locations. So I'm very concerned that this method with special exemptions, independent of the current request, are very problematic. And it's something that I agree, Andy, we need to talk about, and we need to have council look at this as a code perspective. But because we've done them before doesn't mean we should continue to do them. And so I can't support this with how much effort that's been put into the brick and mortar locations and create an unfair competitive position. So I really want to make sure that we're thinking about this at the big picture level. And I with all due respect, I mean, I understand what it means to you guys, and it's really important. But
it's actually not. It's a temporary thing. I'm not sure if Jeremy talked to you guys about that. We had all intentions when we decided to do this to have a kitchen.
And we still will.
We still will. This is just we have to figure out what we're doing. We've never done anything like this before, and I was incredibly intimidated by the food aspect of it. We really wanted to bring the technology to downtown Loveland. Come all the way up until August, we had plans to have a kitchen. We had it built out and everything. And then I panicked and said, we don't know what we're doing. We have no idea. We've never been in the food industry. I'm in sales. My husband's a scenic artist. So we thought, let's just pump the brakes and perfect the tap wall. Give us a year to figure out what we're doing, or it wasn't a time frame, and get our heads on straight. And we really ideally want a chef to come in and rent out our space, and we want to be able to offer food. Our intention was never
we
to
don't
have
want
a food
food
truck.
trucks.
We don't want to be that far, but
won't
we
be
need
back
to
in a
do
year.
this until we figure out. That's the honest to God truth.
and I appreciate that.
And by the way, we have spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
This is not just a small investment.
So do you have an arrangement with the property owner that they're investing in their property to build, or are they putting that burden on you?
At the time we were planning the kitchen, just getting the oven hood, a mechanical engineer, the exhaust system was part of the supply chain mess. And our original investment almost doubled for that equipment. And that's really why we stopped. We said, all right, well, let's hold on. If we can do food trucks for a few months, maybe 6 months max,
Find a chef.
I'll find a great chef and rock star food. I don't want to have subpar
We don't want bar
food that
we don't.
it's available.
We want something special.
Something as neat as the place I've created. And so I'm hoping to do that. Food trucks aren't going to be there that long. It'll be.
It's not our image.
I can't give you a timeline, but it'll be less than a year. I'll tell you that.
I understand. Thanks.
I appreciate.
And I will say that everyone working with everyone on the council, everyone has been incredibly supportive of starting this business. We, once again, have never done this before, and everybody that we've reached out to help us, it has been amazing, has been so incredibly supportive. So I got to be honest, we were a little blindsided.
Yeah, we felt like we're being picked on.
We do. We
I mean,
everybody
Wicked
else
Pickle
has
has
been
a
really
food truck.
supportive.
Mhm.
And so we were like, what?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is, because the technology that we're bringing to downtown Loveland is unbelievable. People are going to come to Loveland to see the technology. So we're really excited. We know you guys are excited, but we don't want to have this like black cloud over our heads that we're the food truck people, because that's not our image.
We don't want them back there.
No.
It's temporary.
Sorry.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. Okay, you can sit down now. Thank you.
I think that gives council some guidance.
Yeah.
On what the approach should be.
I mean, my comment is I agree with, kitchens, I know in the business I run, kitchens are very, very expensive. It's a huge investment. I certainly appreciate that. I guess the thing I want to drive home is that this is we've never had this public buy. We've never had comments negative towards food trucks until now. We've already approved a bunch of food trucks. So with that said, I'm not disagreeing with anything that was made. I think we need to reevaluate it, but I think we're sensitive to the fact that we've already done this, and this is the first time we've heard this from the public comments on this particular truck. So I don't know if it's fair to the people that have applied when everything else has been approved in the past, and now we're saying, no, you can't do this because it's not right when we've already done this. So I think we need to have council look at it from a perspective of, okay, we need to reevaluate this. And it's a year, so it's not, if in a year from now things change and we want to change it, but I think we need to reevaluate it. I don't know. That's my take on it. So anything, other discussions or?
Make a motion.
If you, my recommendation, if you do choose, and it's up to you, to approve the mobile food vendor, it is, I would recommend that we put a moratorium on future applications. It's fairly difficult for Eva, Corey, and I to muddle through a modification of a code like this and still have applications coming in. And we have the power we did the same thing while we were trying to get a handle on, pardon me when I say this, massage parlors. We had an issue. We wanted to address it. We were doing quite a bit of research, and we took the time to put a moratorium on, except it takes the pressure off the staff to work their way through it. You make a decision. That's up to you as a board, but I would recommend, and I would go to council and state that I'm utilizing my power as city manager to notify staff that at this point in time, we're not accepting any more applications. It's not fair. It's not fair to Eva and everyone else because, I think the intention at the time that they did this was, because if you read back the original code, Tom Carroll's even allowed him to go on what is now the Linda Cox trailside parking area to do that. And I think Mr. Egan is right. The times have changed. That being said, do what you need to do. And then I think from that point moving on, we would certainly put a moratorium on applications. It makes it easier for us because
No, I think that makes a lot of sense because, again, I'm not disagreeing with anything that anybody said here with the validity, but I think the issue I have is that they've made an economic decision based on the supply chain and that they could get a food truck, and now we say no. So I think if we're going to do that, we need to put a moratorium on future food trucks. And because I agree, I mean, food trucks are, I think, meant to be transitory and not permanent, but I think what's happened is they become permanent, and I don't think that was ever the intent, but I think we're going to have to fix it from this point forward.
But the way I read it is we should deal with this under the public hearing and our regular business, and then under new business, request that city council revisit this section of code. And while they're doing that a moratorium be put on it and make an official request. So
I would just point out for you that you can ask them to have a moratorium.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That has to be changed by council.
Right. I'm saying, yeah.
And obviously the city manager can exercise his discretion and advise council of that.
I'm just saying,
yeah.
But
the other thing,
council would know we're on board.
Yeah. The other thing that needs to be addressed is, and I think we can talk about this as a staff, is if these other individuals have expired permits, we need
Mm-hmm.
so they'll need to get a letter indicating that it's out of compliance.
Mm-hmm. I want to get your opinion. The clerk of council advised me on this, and we've done this before. We'd always vote on the case during the public hearing and not have to wait till new business.
Right.
Is that
Yeah,
fine? We
on-
do
on
that.
the-
That way the applicant for hops and berries doesn't
Right, on
have
the
to
request. That's
sit
correct.
through Oak Street proposal.
That's correct. Yeah.
The only condition I would include or request to be included is the renewal.
Yeah.
In this case, as part of any kind of
Detail it out. We've done that before too. We've had some where we've given them hours. Okay, you can only be open the hours that business is open, type of thing. So
Is that clearly articulated in here, or are you thinking
we do that?
as
We
part
do
of
that
the
as part
motion?
of our motion.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to make sure we include it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yep. No, correct. More discussion? Do we have a motion from?
I'll go ahead and make it.
Okay.
I move we approve request number 2203 with the following additional stipulations: that the permit will expire in 1 year, that the hours of operation shall be the same as the business that is applied for the permit, and I don't think there's anything else we've ever put on them, is there?
No, I think to follow all.
And follow
I'll follow the
follow all
comes to fire lanes
codes,
and
yeah,
all the codes that are listed in the.
but specifically paragraphs 13,
In compliance with those.
right, and the additional condition that they only operate the hours which the toast or hops and berries is open.
Second.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
No.
Mr. O'Neill,
No.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
3-2, motion carries.
All right. Next order of business is public hearing for special planning district. Case 22-04, the Hunt and Whitaker property, which is known as Oak Street. Do we have a motion to open it up to public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Well, don't make it so obvious.
5-0, motion carries.
So we have
Excuse me.
2 people signed up. The others look like they signed up for hops and berries. So we had Mr. Osborne. Yeah. Well, that we did not have that was the public hearing portion was closed.
The general open forum. I didn't see your name on it, or else I would have
I'm
come to
sorry.
you.
I
Told
saw
you to-
that after I pulled this sheet
Yeah.
up. So yes, Mr. Osborne.
Okay. Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive. The Oak Street property. Once again, a request for a special planning district of a single parcel of land. A parcel located not in the downtown, but in a subdivision. Harry Hanna's farm. Says so on the deed. Plat Book B, page 84. Currently, 2 homes per acre are permitted. 6 are being requested. The hillside is not being touched. This is a good thing, since the city and state have put about $500,000 into securing the hill from sliding. What's being proposed is dangerous to the rest of the city. If someone can do a teardown, request an SPD for a single parcel, nothing in the city will be safe. We become Madeira. We become Montgomery. Out-of-place McMansions on postage stamp lots. Who needs setbacks or other subdivision rules, right? This proposed project does not match the rest of the subdivision. That's going to be my key word, subdivision. This is in the subdivision, not in the downtown city of Loveland. It might as well be in Pheasant Hills on the Lake, or Loveland Heights, or Century Hill. This is in an established subdivision. Harry Hanna's farm zone residential medium density. 35-foot front yards, 15-foot side yards, and 40-foot rear setback. Nothing higher than 35 feet. This isn't a special planning district. This is a property variance. Wrong commission. This should be being heard in front of the BZA. This is an improper use of the SPD process. This is singling out of a lot for different treatment. That's the definition of spot zoning. That's the state law. The court case found it's illegal. I believe this is illegal. This request is not in the public's best interest. So, as a resident and taxpayer, please deny this request. I fear that my subdivision is going to be targeted by whomever. It doesn't benefit the city. The mix of properties have got to remain what they are. Otherwise, you've sold out the city. Not everybody can afford $600,000 postage stamp houses. Are you going to gentrify the city? That's what this does. In realistic terms. But to this issue, it exceeds what is proper. The subdivision is not crammed with homes, so it needs to look similar. Don't give it a different treatment. That's spot zoning, and that's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sabo?
My name's Rodney Sabo. I reside at 1620 Fairway Crest, Loveland, Ohio. I'm here representing the developers. I'm also the person who designed the homes. We've been through 2 other attempts. Each time we've scaled down the proposal. I think we've scaled this down to something that's very realistic and takes into account many of the current concerns in the past. We made application. We met with the Planning Commission to review the general scope of the proposed project. Hence, we are here. We felt that we were within the Planning and Zoning felt we were within the spirit of the SPD. Now we're asking for the Planning Commission, Planning and Zoning, to recommend the initiation of an SPD. Current zoning is RMD, residential, medium density, and historic. Current zoning would allow for 1 home on the residential property.
Here's where
All of the adjacent
Let's just top the slope.
homes in this area are all non-conforming existing uses. They don't meet the requirements of the RMD zoning right now. They don't even come close to it by square footage reasons, by setback reasons, for a number of reasons. With the present zoning, we could put 1 home on the existing lot. We could do up to 4 homes, 4 buildings
26.
on the historic structure. We've chosen not to build on the hillside in the historic district. We're going to put that, leave that as a permanent preservation of that property and make it a non-build area. The unique topography, shape, and multiple zoning designation make the property development congruent with SPD. The SPD allows for more flexible lot sizes and results in the preservation of the existing hillside. We can shift the density to the best suited development area with an SPD. We've met with fire department, other city officials to get them to look at this. There's no requirements that they thought that we would have to do specifically to meet their approval. what we're proposing is really taking into consideration the neighbors as well. By other zoning districts, the rear yard setback, we actually show that we're asking for a 20-foot setback in the rear yard. The buildings are 41 feet away from that. We just ask the flexibility if somebody wants to put a screened-in porch or something on there, they would be able to do. We don't have any rooftop decks on this. That was a concern that we heard before. We don't exceed the 35-foot building height. And we think this is a benefit to the city. Tax basis, more residents in that area in proximity to support the business district. That's really all I have to present at the moment, and happy to take any questions that you may have.
Questions?
I
Yes,
have
yes.
a few. So I'm getting caught up. So sorry to probably some fundamental questions. When I look between a couple of the pages, as Mr. Wright has displayed them in the packet, page, I need my glasses, 36, and the difference between that and page 37, where you show the two districts, right? You have RMD and historic. Is that all currently one lot, or is there a lot line today that splits between those two?
It's one parcel.
It's one parcel, no lot line split.
Correct.
What's shown in page, the following page, 37, is that, are you splitting the lots, or is it still one parcel? Because there appears to be a movement of that line where you're moving the district from historic to RMD, and where that line is
We just created a setback on that right side of 30 feet. So, like I said, we would, the intent here is we would create a no-build area for that historic district, and that line represents where the historic district ends.
today. I think the page where I'm confused with this page before it would suggest the historic district actually is in a different location based on the setback lines that you're indicating. Maybe it's just the way it's shown in the graph, but
I think Unit 6 is actually in the historic district.
okay, and that may be that.
That's why they moved that one. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so it's sort of it's actually right there.
Yeah, no, there's a little
Like a tab on
it, but in the following picture it doesn't show it. So if that's not moving, if that line in district definition is not moving, then to Mr. Kressler's point, unit number 6 is on the edge of the historic district or slightly in it.
But I get the impression you're going to reserve, there will be no construction
Correct.
in that box
Correct.
labeled historic.
And that
Correct.
would be a deed restriction.
Yes.
Other question when I look at this, and I look at the slope lines, again, I'm on the page 37. I'm looking at the topo map and the slope of those units on lot number 6. That sits across basically a slope that if that unit moved towards the historic district, which is probably more in the northwest direction.
Southwest.
No, if I'm moving that way, it'd be
Yeah.
northwest.
Yeah.
Mostly west.
South is that way.
Mr. Wesker, if I go
North is that way.
here,
Yeah, thank you. So if that unit were to move, so that 35-foot setback to that line as you have indicated, if that were less, that could give more space on the opposite end for lot 1, which is only 5 feet from the lot line, which is a far cry from protecting the neighboring property.
We would have difficulty getting the driveway in.
Yeah, I think
The street falls there.
I think Al, you had talked about that
Yeah.
before, and
Yeah.
looked at that, try
You know,
to line up the driveways.
the RMD to the left of Unit 1, they have a 15-foot side yard requirement. And our past experience has been that the developers, at least, they can get narrower side lots within the footprint of the buildings, but they respect if this one next door has a 15, well, then we go 15, and then we start our 3 or 5 foot side yards. And that's basically the only issue. I don't have any problem with the front yard.
Yep.
Also, let me interrupt 1 second.
I'm sorry.
I think, well, these are all good discussions, but I think what the process, the way I understand it, is we would vote on whether this meets the general intent of a special planning district, and then it would go to council and come back, and then we could also, if we wanted to modify or
then we get into
change
the
anything,
details.
we
But
get
I'm
into
just wanting you to
detail.
know that
Yeah, and I'll
that's
just,
an issue we have.
And I'll just tell you that we looked at doing that, but it became difficult to get the driveway in for that unit when we did so. And it also got that unit more into the hillside.
But I think it's good to get everybody's thoughts and inputs as to what the thinking is. If it does get approved, don't know if it will or not, but if it does, then you come back, and then having that insight would be helpful, I think, because I think myself too, I think the rear setback, I think it also needs to be talked about that there's a 40-foot setback for the primary structure like you've intended, because even if the setback is 20 foot, theoretically you could build the whole building back there and not, I know the intent is for a porch or something, which is fine, but I don't think we would want to have a whole structure going back that far. So those are things that I think we would need to clarify if we did move forward. And I think Rob's got a very good point about the side setback and the driveway.
And we walked that, because the other thing is you'll see that the buildings actually, to where the garages are, the driveway is 25 feet to the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
And then additionally, there's another 8 to 12 feet in that right of way. So we wanted to take into consideration parking up there, because it is somewhat narrow, to try to make the driveways deeper so we could accommodate that parking up to potentially 6 cars in a driveway,
but
without getting too far back. So
I think
it's a balance.
Right. I think our chairman's point is well taken. We're not voting to approve it tonight. We're just voting.
Correct.
Does it meet one of the paragraphs to meet the special planning district?
I think we've got,
which I think it does.
Historically, we've had, I can't remember what we started off with. Was there
69 units?
Well, yeah,
64.
64.
Yeah. So we've gotten a lot, and then there was another one with, I think, 9 or 10.
We had a 12, and then a 9, and then a 7.
So now we're headed in the direction, I think, that from what you heard public input before, we're definitely.
But so from an overall density perspective, when you look at a lot with the protected space, with the restriction on it, does it meet the RMD?
No.
So
no.
How close is it? Where is it?
It's basically about double. Oh, more than double. More than double.
The RMD.
But across the street is
so
which is.
I understand.
Should we?
So,
let me interrupt 1 second. Should we close public hearing and
Yes.
Public comment.
So. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to just okay. No. That's your trust me. Your experience is very valuable here. So
it's okay.
Do we have a motion to close?
I move we close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So now we roll into discussions on this, which we've had some of that already. But yes, Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize.
No, it's all good. Especially with the uniqueness of this location. The thing that we have done in the past, I think I was involved in SPD 1. So we look at the number of SPDs that we've had.
Was that Glen Lakes?
No, that was the Deer Ridge Apartments.
Okay.
But one of the things that we tried to do for most SPDs was hold to the underlying zoning and use, because of the unique topography, because of the unique situation of the land, how do we meet that density by having some flexibility within the overarching size of the property based on those special needs. And so to me, that's kind of a fundamental premise around the SPD. And when you look at it in conjunction with the surrounding zones, if it was all buried in RMD, right, I'd be really sticky about an RMD density. zoning, when you're trying, part of our job here is to help protect those property owners that have invested in this community. So are we protecting surrounding property and property values when we are looking at this as a transition zone between multifamily and medium density, which is what surrounds it, right? So as a transition, where does this fit, right? And so where I'm struggling is, are we meeting our intent of what an SPD is trying to do? And are we still protecting those surrounding property owners without overdoing and encroaching on, densifying, if you will, that piece of property above and beyond what is going to be detrimental to those neighboring properties? So those are the things foundationally that I look at when I think about what is the SPD. Then we move into, the details. What are the setbacks? What are the, sightline protections, berming, shrubbery? When you start really getting into all the details. So we could argue about the details, but I think fundamentally I'm struggling with the SPD process to actually bump the density up and not just have a density that's complementary to the terrain.
Well, we've also got multifamily across the street. Is that what MF?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's so that's as a transition zone, right? The argument you're making there is this would be a transition to the other properties that isn't a multifamily. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to put things on the table to actually get back to kind of the fundamentals of the conversation from my perspective.
It would be less density than the RMF, is what this would be.
Or the historic. There's also the historic district.
Historic has no density limitation.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's the most open zoning we have, basically. Right.
So we've got restrictive, less restrictive, no restrictions.
Right.
So
and it's a transition.
And
Well,
we're also trying to protect this hillside. So yeah.
And the rear setback too is 40 foot on there, so we're not. I mean, that's. I think some of it, whoever you're butting up on behind it is kind of a little bit.
The only other question that I guess I have is when we look at SPDs in terms of acreage, do we have a list of our SPDs by size? What is the smallest SPD we've done?
Eva, would you know off the top of your head?
Is this it?
Yes.
Probably.
Pretty close.
Yes.
I guess.
And I would like to point out, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the RMD regulations are 35 front. They're at 30. They're 5 feet away. They're at 30 feet in the rear, and RMD is 40, so they're only 10 feet there. And they did move the lot 1 to 15 feet, even though the neighbor was fine where they had it at 5 feet. And the commission and staff were concerned about lot 6 protruding into that hillside. So for the protection of the hillside, they moved it back, and they have notified all the property owners. The property owners that were concerned came to the 5 different hearings we had on the 5 different proposals, and everybody that I've talked to seem to be fine with where we've landed here versus the other proposals.
Yeah.
As you see, no one came tonight,
Right.
so
Yeah,
I wanted to give Rob some history.
Yeah.
But talking.
Well, I mean,
Since you said, I remember.
you've had a public hearing before. You've come back to council or the zoning board here with the changes. I mean, at the previous meeting, I felt that you deserved a fair hearing, so I still think you deserve that public hearing. So I'll be voting in favor.
Yeah, we do have another public hearing when it comes back to us.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get grounded.
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate everybody's patience, but I don't want to. I want to be very careful, my personal perspective, about using an SPD on a single small lot, right? and over densifying it inappropriately. So I'm not saying it is. I'm just that is where my threshold is.
Well, we're going to run into this because we had the last meeting with the approval of the new master plan, and in that master plan it talks about dropping patio homes and that assembling lots. So we're going to be facing this as part of the new master plan.
Right.
Kind of recognize this type of thing is going to occur.
I think
we SPDs. I'm sorry, Mr. We did in those SPDs, like Brandywine and some of the other ones, is we accounted for the overall density. So yes, we did patio homes. Yes, they were tightly packed, but the rest of the property, as an aggregate, would meet an overarching density for medium density or whatever. So you had lots that were basically a lower density up front, with larger lots, with the smaller packed in lots in the back. So in the aggregate, it made it, more managed.
And I think those are all good points. And I think you're right. We've got to make sure we're meeting the intent of this. I think there's some trade-offs here. That the fact that if the deeded the historic hillside is going to be preserved, because somebody could put, build like a Mount Adams type style homes there or whatever you wanted to, and do whatever they wanted. So there's some trade-offs, I think, back and forth. But I think what we got to decide tonight is just to meet the intent, and then if it goes into, we have another. Is that correct? We have another public hearing on that.
And council has a hearing.
Council has a hearing. So there's going to be a lot more time to vet this.
There'll be multiple hearings on this, and
It would be 3 more.
3 more. And then does that include HPPC as well?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
separate. So it goes to council for a public hearing, comes back to you for a standard zoning text, public hearing, and then goes back to city council as a zoning. So it goes from an SPD to the standard zoning map text change, map change process. So it all starts over again.
And
we modified the SPD regulations back with that issue up on Oak, that subdivision up on Oak that modified it. One of the biggest things that we did was, in the past, the determination on whether or not it even meets an SPD, it was done sitting around Eva's office. And we didn't think that was right. So we brought that determination question, yay or nay, to P&Z.
Yeah.
Nothing against Eva. I just mean, it just didn't feel right that we made that determination.
Yeah, because
sorry.
Yeah.
Multi-steps, and then in addition to that, you have HPPC, which is on top of that, where you actually get into
one of the residents throughout the HPCC process. One of the residents on the top of South Second asked the Historic Preservation Planning Commission, who at that time already had their boundaries set, to consider including this property within the boundaries. They modified the boundaries to include this property into the boundaries. So that parcel then has to go for full historic preservation review, materials, everything.
Yep.
So, and actually at this point in time, I'm actually working to get a historic preservation architect on retainer for the Historic Preservation Commission. Right now, they've been dealing with signs and siding and some basic stuff, but we know there's other projects that are coming their way.
Okay. Any more discussions? Do we have a?
I move that we recommend to Loveland City Council that case 022-04 be
Set for a public hearing.
Set for a step for them to proceed with their establishment of a special planning district. I think that's the way we have to word it. That they have to declare it a special planning district.
So if I forgive me for interjecting, I just want to make sure we follow procedure for the code. So, as I understand it, Mr. Kressler, you're making a motion that you're adopting a formal recommendation pursuant to section 1151.02A.2C of the Planning and Zoning Code. That the Planning and Zoning Commission is recommending the City Council in favor of the establishment of the special hearing district.
Well, that's exactly what I said.
Perfect. There might be some.
Eva will word it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Kressler,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber. 4-0, motion carries.
Zero.
4-0-1.
Next orders, new business. Do we want to
Do we want to make a formal
a
motion?
motion to
It would be, council would do it as a motion. What I would do is
Recommendation?
you would make a recommendation. I will take it to council because ultimately I have to enforce it. So I would give them a brief history on how we got here on mobile foods, and give them a quick history of where we're at without specifically pointing fingers or rehashing history, and state that the Planning Commission has made 2 recommendations. One, first and foremost, that staff works with the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a text amendment on mobile food vendors in the downtown district, and consequently, in conjunction with that the Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended that during that period of time that city staff, through the city manager, is directed to no longer accept applications for special exceptions for mobile food vendors. I'll write it up.
Once again, that's what I said as a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kressler?
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber?
yes,
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
yes.
5-0, motion carries.
All right.
Okay.
Any other new business? I don't think so. Any old business? Discussion, communications, council representation? Nope. Hearing none. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. They appoint a new member. Now we're going to do it on 14. Here, let me turn it. Hang on a second.
I'm sorry.
A second.
Spots be in. What's that?